Hello, bonjour, and welcome to your Astrology 101 workshop. You're in the right place if you're a beginner with astrology and you're curious to learn more, or if you're looking to brush up on the basics. So to give you an overview of what to expect in this workshop is that we're going to begin with an introduction, and then we're going to describe what is astrology. We're going to follow with a brief note on the branches and approaches to astrology, which I think is really important to differentiate. And then we're going to move forward with the foundations of astrology to follow up with some of the best ways to learn astrology. And then we'll end with universal lessons of astrology. So to introduce myself, my name is Alexandra Albert. For short, I go by Alex and my pronouns are she, her. I'm currently based out of North Bay, Ontario, Canada, and I'm a proud Francophone bilingual. I was actually born and raised in Niagara in a city called Welland. And my journey really led me to astrology in 2015 when I was going through what I would describe as a spiritual awakening and a deep healing journey where I was in the works of ending an abusive relationship. And I was never planned to become an astrologer, but it really initiated me into a profound healing journey that led me to having a mission to share this modality with other people. So some titles that I go by is I'm a counseling astrologer and I'm a trauma-aware life coach. I'm a holistic psychoeducator, as well as a yoga and meditation teacher. I have a background as a speech language pathologist with a master in health sciences, and I'm also a candidate for a Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology. So if you want to learn more about my professional biography and my journey, please head over to my website. It's www.wildastrologybyalex.com, and be sure to look at the description box down below so that you can know what events and offerings I currently have and ways that we can connect and work with one another. So to get the most out of this workshop, I really invite you to attend with an open mind. I also invite you to reflect on what attracted you to watching this workshop and why you are interested in learning more about astrology, and then also be curious about any judgments and skepticism. So that goes with being an open mind. I know for myself, when I first entered the world of astrology, I did have some judgments and some preconceived ideas about what it was about. And there's a lot of myths and misconceptions for a lot of reasons. And so simply to acknowledge what comes up as you learn this content is something I recommend. And then finally, please limit any distractions by turning off your phone and notifications so that you can fully be present for this time in place. So now let's talk about what is astrology. Now, this is a huge question that we could talk about for hours and hours and hours, but just to give you a brief description, this is how I would define it. Astrology is a language of the universe. So anyone who is looking to explore astrology or to study astrology is really studying the correlations between celestial bodies and life on Earth. So there's this saying that goes by as above, so below, and this really applies to astrology. And I know one of my preconceived ideas was that astrology was this like cause and effect kind of system. So like the astrological conditions were causing certain things or making me feel a certain way, but it's really a mirror or a reflection of our interconnectedness for all things in life. So what I really love about this system or this language, which is very ancient, this is not new at all, this has been around for a very long time, is that it can be applied as a holistic lifestyle practice and a healing and personal growth tool. So personally, as a kind of counseling astrologer, I really am passionate about the therapeutic impact of, or the therapeutic benefits of astrology and how we can really learn to live in alignment with the cycles of the universe so that it becomes actually a lifestyle. So people utilize astrology as a tool for many different reasons, and we're going to talk about the branches and approaches because some people come to an astrology reading with not really an idea of what to expect, or they come with the expectation with their preconceived ideas, and it might not necessarily be what they want or what they expect. But know that because astrology is literally a language of the universe and a reflection of life, that you can know that there is a branch or an approach of astrology that can suit your needs. And as you can see here, I've included a picture of a diverse group of people because we can meet you where you're at, and representation is really important. So know that you can do your research, you can reach out to me so that we can connect you with someone who really meets your needs and represents who you are in the day and age. I know as I've been studying astrology, I've noticed in some texts and some approaches, interpretations that are very outdated and repress, or that are oppressive and based on patriarchal perspectives. And so I'm really looking to undo this to have a bigger, inclusive, and trauma-aware approach to astrology. So let's talk about the branches and approaches to astrology to provide you with different, because they to provide you with an idea of the different experiences that you can have and seek out the proper professional or the proper resources to really get what you need out of this language. So we're actually going to begin by defining the branches here. So these are some lineages of astrology. And so if you can look on the right side of the screen, beginning with defining evolutionary astrology, which is what I practice primarily. And evolutionary astrology, and we're going to talk about the birth chart in a moment here, but we see the birth chart as a map of the soul's potential evolution. So we see every single person as having a soul with past lives and a progression of development. So it's kind of like your expression or your experience can be on a spectrum of experience. And so you have the power to really decide how you're going to respond to conditions to favor your evolution. I also practice Hellenistic astrology for certain timing techniques and approaches, but Hellenistic astrology differs from evolutionary astrology in the sense that it's traditional and doesn't have the same perspective of like evolutionary growth. And it's very powerful, like I said, for certain techniques and approaches that we use for accuracy. So for example, if I'm practicing something like profections or zodiacal releasing, I will use the whole sign chart system, which is something that is used in Hellenistic astrology. So evolutionary astrology and Hellenistic astrology are both Western approaches, which differ from Vedic astrology, which is also known as Hindu astrology or Jyotish, and it's based in the Eastern regions. So again, they just use a different kind of chart system, which differs our interpretations, and we also consider a different kind of lens or viewpoint to make our interpretations. So none of them are better than the other, they're just simply different, and it depends on the approaches that we use. So here you can see that there's a lot of different things here, and I know for myself, it's taken me a while to actually be able to make these distinctions and know that, like, as a practitioner, I don't need to fill all of these lanes. So astrology is really beautiful, and like the Aquarian sense of like how so many of us are unique and can offer different perspectives to really build this tree of astrology. So I'm a counseling astrologer, so I focus mostly on counseling astrology. I will define counseling astrology in more detail in the following slides, given that this is my professional practice. But to give you a brief definition of the other approaches, mundane astrology is really concerned with world events, the political sphere, and the socioeconomic situations of the world. Synastry is focused on compatibility in relationships, romance. Predictive astrology is something I practice as well, and we're focused here on the future and forecasting, so being able to align ourselves to really work with the outcomes of the energies that are at play within the future realm. So I also practice solar return charts, which is a predictive technique. Medical astrology is something that I practice as well, just a little bit if I can within my scope. And here we're really concerned with like illnesses and being able to support someone's health in a holistic way. Hari astrology, I hope I pronounced that right, is concerned with like specific questions and the timing that that question was being asked. So there are a set of rules and techniques used in this approach. Business astrology is something that's emerging and really, especially for example, in a corporation, for using astrology and the birth charts as personality profiles or being able to make economic decisions, which goes with mundane astrology. Horoscope astrology, this is mainly what people see in pop astrology. And that uses also a specific technique to be able to know the energies at play on a day-to-day or monthly. Locational astrology is focused on like the geography and the energies in different regions of the world, and being able to match that energy, or being able to counsel you on the best or worst place to be in the world for whatever outcome you want. Electional astrology is focused on like auspicious or favorable timing of certain decision making. And then karmic astrology is something that I use as well, because it is part of evolutionary astrology. And here we're really looking at the themes that get passed on from lifetime to lifetime. So here we have to take the lens that we believe in reincarnation, and knowing that we have an impact from past lives that has an effect on our current life experience. So let's talk about counseling astrology. So counseling astrology is really appropriate for times of crisis, of transition, awakening, healing, and growth. And you don't necessarily need to be in those kinds of moments, but simply if you are in a space of wanting to become more self-aware, and supporting your personal transformation is something that counseling astrology is very supportive of. So here in this approach, we combine astrological knowledge with, for myself, my own approach, I use trauma-aware life coaching skills, counseling skills, and somatic embodiment skills. So it's kind of like combining the two to really provide you with something that's therapeutic. So not all counseling astrologers will have this type of combination, but it's basically like cosmic insight plus counseling skills to really bring you with this heart-centered approach where you as the client is at the center. This approach really helps us problem solve, moving through challenging situations, gaining clarity on your patterns, and finding meaning in your experiences. So I know a lot of people who come to me in times of crisis or transition, they leave the session feeling like they have like a psycho-spiritual understanding behind what they're experiencing. And then finally, this also helps us become aware, or you can become aware of your deeply rooted unconscious patterns from past lives, trauma, and childhood. So with this awareness and empowerment, you're able to respond differently. So you can embody the truth of who you are, fully experience life as a human being, and reach your fullest potential. So I know in my own practice, I really have an intention of providing a safe space for you to receive support in your journey of self-becoming. So overall, I think if we were going to give an umbrella for all of the approaches and branches of astrology, is that they provide the gift of self-awareness. And I think self-awareness is like the biggest superpower that we can have. And so when you learn astrology, you learn about yourself, you learn about others, and you learn about the world that we live in and how connected you are to it and your place in the world. And I love this quote by Amanda Pua Walsh from Astrology Hub. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. It's P-U-A. Pua Walsh. And she said, with awareness comes empowerment, with empowerment comes choice, and with choice comes hope. So I think this is medicine that we can all benefit from personally and collectively. So now let's talk about the foundations of astrology. So the first foundation is the astrological birth chart. So you can see an image here on the screen. And I'm going to bring up an example shortly to really help you orient yourself to the birth chart. And simply put, the birth chart is a map of the location of the stars at the exact time that you were born. So if you were to take a snapshot of the location of the stars, it would provide you with a chart or a map. And this provides a holistic framework for explaining the human psyche, life experience, and the soul's potential evolution. And so the birth chart is really important because it is at the root of all of our interpretations. And so we take your exact time, location, and date of birth to cast this map. And so the more exact that you can be, the more accurate you will the reading will be if you get an interpretation done for you. And so something I also want to say that like birth charts can be casted cast for like anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be for the birth of your life. It could be for transition times, if you're like, for example, ending a career or ending, like going through a breakup, or if you are launching a book, or if you know, you can even cast the birth chart of Canada and the United States. Literally, you can like cast a chart for any single moment and find meaning in it. And I think inherently life is full of meaning. So at the core of the birth chart, and thus the language of astrology, are four basic components. First, we find planets, which are the what. And planets are the functions of the mind. And so the mind and the psyche. So for example, if you think Mercury is the planet of communication and thinking, the cognition, Venus is the planet of love and relationships and what we assign value to and a beauty to. So here we have the sun, the moon, and the 9 planets in our solar system, but we also find other points like the nodes of the moon, Chiron, the asteroids. So we can see that the what and the psyche is actually a very complex system. And I know for myself, I didn't know that. All I knew was that my sun was in Scorpio. I didn't know that I also had a moon sign, a rising sign, but also a sign for all of the planets in our solar system and beyond. So we can see that this paints a really beautiful picture of like the complexity of the human mind. Now in that, the second component are the zodiac signs. So there are 12 zodiac signs, and these describe the strategies, the behaviors, actions taken to approach the functions of the mind. So if the planets are the what, the zodiac signs of how we are going to fulfill the functions of the mind. Okay. And then the third component are the houses, and the houses are areas of life where the planet sign combinations are expressed. So this is more of the where. So we can kind of see, okay, if there's a function, there's a way that we are going to approach that function, but which area of life is that going to be crystallized in? And then we follow up with our fourth component, which is the bigger picture and how everything is connected. So the aspects are geometrical alignments or energetic relationships between the planets, the zodiac signs, and the houses. So again, it helps us when we have all of these components together and the aspects providing the bigger picture, we see how everything is interconnected. We see the bigger picture. And as human beings, we're, you know, multifaceted. We have contradicting parts, and but we also have complementary parts. And so oftentimes like one, you know, function of the psyche is connected to another function of the psyche, or one way that we approach something is actually connected into 2 areas of life. So I love this because it gives us a really big understanding, or a very comprehensive understanding of life and, you know, psychology, the soul. So now we're going to put it together within an actual chart orientation. And so this is a screenshot taken with the system that I use for calculating charts, and it's the Time Passages software by Astrograph, which I highly recommend. I really like that system. So if you wanted, you know, a copy of your birth chart, you can email me directly at wildastrologybyalex@gmail.com, or you can calculate it for free on cafeastrology.com. There are also a lot of other great free astrology websites, but they might not necessarily look like this, because this is just simply the chart that I use. And so this is actually Neil Young's chart. He's the musician, the highly influential musician. And I'm not exactly sure if this is his correct birth time, but nonetheless, it does give us an idea of what to work with. And I'm not going to interpret it right now, but I just want to give you like an orientation of how this map works, because it can seem like really overwhelming and really confusing. So let's break it down for you. So let's say like this was your chart. Okay, so you would be actually like, we could say that you were right here in the center of all of this at the time that you were born, right? In this case, for Neil Young's chart, he's in Toronto, Canada. Right. And so we can see this as also being the Earth then, right? If we as human beings are born on Earth. This is our solar system, the sky around the Earth. Okay, this is the eastern horizon, and this is the western horizon. This would be the sky above and the sky below. So you can see that Neil Young actually has, if he's born at 4 a.m., he has a night chart. he was born before the sun was, above the horizon. But we could see that it was like in the early morning. So if this is the horizon where the sun would be rising, then we know that this is the symbol for the sun. So you can kind of visualize in terms of like our cosmology or our place on Earth is like, okay, I can visualize that the sun was below the horizon in this place, in correspondence or from my viewpoint on Earth. And so we can see here that we have the planets in the sun, the planets in our solar system, the moon, and then this is the rising sign is calculated upon like the horizon where the sun would be rising. And then the different chunks of the sky, here, the different sections, the 12 sections are the houses. And each of these have different meanings for areas of life. And then from here, you see the symbols within in the center here. And these are the zodiac signs. So for example, if we were to come here, this is a symbol of Venus, then we see that Venus is in Scorpio in the first house. And then if we were to get, another layer, then we also have the degrees, which is like, a next step that is beyond the scope of this class. But know that every single thing you see here has meaning. And so being able to learn the language yourself or working with a skilled professional astrologer can help you really draw out or unearth the meaning in this experiences and how it reflects your psyche and your experience. And just to give you an idea of the aspects here are the lines, the colored lines in the center here. And so you can see this is the blue line is a trine. So it is 120 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. So there's here, for example, there's a connection between Jupiter in Libra and Uranus in Gemini, right? And also a connection between the 9th house and then the 1st house. Again, so these are all different like pieces of the puzzle that we put together to read the story that you tell. There's also meaning here, right? And you can see all of this can be interpreted within the elements, the modes and types. And, you don't need to understand all of these components to benefit from using this super powerful tool for personal growth and self-awareness. But simply, there is a code to it. There are step-by-step guidelines that you can use to start to decode. And now one thing I will say too, in case that this might be helpful, that there are different ways to calculate the charts. So if you look at the bottom of the screen here, you see this is actually a Koch house system. So I personally use Koch houses for the approach for my interpretations. And so you might, if you're calculating your chart with a different kind of house system, you might see that your birth chart looks different than one that I would calculate with Koch houses. I also use whole signs if I'm using any like traditional Hellenistic astrology techniques, but know that all roads lead home. Right? Again, we are multidimensional beings who are highly complex. And so if we were to say, okay, this system is the one that is the truth of everything, would be very limiting and, in my opinion, false. I think there is value in every kind of perspective that we can take. Okay. So the second major component or fundamental component of astrology are astrological transits. So again, just to remind you, the birth chart is at the foundation, at the root of all of our interpretations. So the transits then are how the movements of celestial bodies, so the sun, moon, and planets, interact with our birth chart and activate certain parts. So you can kind of see, if we were to go back to this slide here, this gives us like an overview of like Neil Young's potential personality and his potential soul evolution. But everything you see here are basically like realizations waiting to happen. So the current movements or the movements of the planets through time tell us the story of those realizations that will unfold and activate. So you can see, like, if you were to think, okay, the birth chart is one map. Then if you wanted to see what's going on right now, for example, in the transits and how that's interacting with your birth chart, thus you and your life experience, we would take the map of right now, the location of the stars right now, and put it together and seeing how then there are relationships between those two charts. Okay, so we have the transits, but then we also have a whole other kind of, there's other types of calculations and techniques for timing, like progressions and perfections. So again, like you don't need to understand everything, but know that it is like it's like infinitely deep. But again, like you can consult a professional astrologer like me to help you understand what this means for you. So this is an example of transits wheel. And as you can see, like there's a lot going on. And this is called a bi-wheel because we are literally putting two birth charts together. So you can see almost two wheels of astrology together. So in the center, we have Neil Young's birth chart. And then we have the transits chart, which was the transits for April of 2020, right? So if you were kind of see, okay, well, what are the energies at play for that day or that time? And like, we could like, there's so much that we can do. We can literally go back in time and forward, and then we can see how it's actually interacting with his birth chart, right? So if you were to think about how everything is connected, how there are alignments and relationships between everything in the chart, you know that it gets like, highly informational when you add the transits chart. So I know that when I'm having readings with people and we incorporate transits or any other timing technique, that it's like extremely validating for what people are going through. So if you think from a counseling astrology perspective, that in terms of supporting people through moments of transit or crisis, transition, to gain understanding and tools or support to move through what they're experiencing, this is life-changing for a lot of people, myself included. So some of the best ways to learn astrology, because I don't believe that astrology is meant to be learned through like a workshop like this or simply through books or just learning the language. First of all, we do need to learn the language. It's like wanting to, if you're an English speaker and you're wanting to learn, you want to speak French, but you're trying to align your lifestyle or be fluent, like you need to learn the basics. So learning the language is important. So if you were to go think back to like the chart that I showed you and we were describing, oh, this is the symbol for the sun, this is the symbol for Venus, right? These are all, it's a symbolic language. So to be able to understand the meaning behind those symbols will help you to learn the language. Another way is to get an astrology reading. I know that getting an astrology reading really catapults people into journeys of learning astrology. I know for me, I studied astrology on my own a little bit before getting my first reading. And then I just like skyrocketed in my journey once I got a professional astrology reading. And it absolutely changed my life. So being able to have like someone basically translate or interpret the symbols is really powerful for learning the language, but also to even like start to connect the dots or paint a bigger picture for what you've already been learning, if you already have been, once you've gotten an astrology reading. I also recommend working with a counseling astrologer over a period of time, because there's only so much that you can do in one session. And as you can see, like as I was showing you in the transits, like there is so much that you can explore over time, and we are human beings that are constantly changing. So to be able to work with a counselor astrologer over a period of time helps you really see the different unfolding of the transits and your life experience. And also to receive accountability and support for the mindful embodiment of the insights revealed in your chart. So if we're revealing, for example, like a pattern that is hindering you from really reaching your fullest potential from childhood, it's like, okay, being able to work through that over time together with accountability and support. And then this is one of my personal favorites, is aligning your lifestyle to follow the cycles of the universe. So for example, I'm really passionate about the sun moon cycles and how they reflect these seasons and the rhythms of the earth, and aligning like personal development practices with that, as well as the menstrual cycle. Again, I'm a cycle educator. So to be able to live in alignment and live in rhythm with that. And then from here, over time, because it does take practice, is to you start to begin to see the synchronicities around you. So, you might go to astrology to learn more about yourself, but then you start to understand and draw like connections between like everybody around you, and being able to see how you feel with a certain astrological transit. And yeah, it's something that is like beyond words, really, and it's something that's really to be experienced. And so just to give another note on like aligning your lifestyle to follow the cycles of the universe, it's like, okay, you can learn about, what is the cycle of Neptune, or what is the cycle, of any planet. But once you actually like follow it through the transits over time, it really starts to crystallize within your mind, thus strengthening your understanding and the synchronicities that you see. Okay. We're almost done here. So we're going to conclude with universal lessons of astrology, which I have been able to just see through my practice, personally and professionally. Okay, so one universal lesson is that we all come from the same source, yet we are all extremely unique. Some components of astrology in the birth chart are generational, while some of them are highly unique and really connected to our intimate, families and our early childhood experiences and past lives. So I really believe that you were born for a reason, and that the story you tell is an absolute gift. And to be able to, really honor the truth of you, who you are, helps the entire world. And I believe in some way, shape, or form that we are born here to be ourselves, to be authentic. And the birth chart helps us do that. Another thing is that everything is constantly ebbing and flowing in a cyclical rhythm. There's this like common saying in the spiritual community, like, this too shall pass. But like, as you start to study astrology and align with its cycles to ride the rhythms, you really start to see the cycles, and that everything is constantly ebbing and flowing. So, again, with the lifestyle component is like, you can ride those rhythms. And then another thing is that our complex and conflicting parts can work together and be met with compassion and self-agency. Like, oftentimes we're like, oh, like, I wish I didn't have this part of my chart or this part of my personality, but it's like, what does it have to offer? What can it teach you? What can it tell you? But ultimately, like, those parts of us that we tend to reject can actually offer a lot of value in our lives and our experiences. So to be able to like have a clear understanding and words to put to our experiences and how we feel can help us really lead with that level of self-love and self-responsibility and empowerment. And then the final lesson here is really something that is from like evolutionary astrology, which I touched on briefly. And it's that you have the power to respond consciously to astrological conditions and transform your life. I really don't believe that it's causing something. It's like, I think that with this kind of awareness and empowerment, that you can choose to respond mindfully. And if it's difficult for you, then perhaps it's a matter of like using tools in counseling astrology, like somatic embodiment and mindfulness and trauma education, to really be able to work through our behavior patterns and heal. So finally, thank you. Merci, Chimiguech. I really value your time and your energy. So thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video. I would love for you to connect, subscribe, and work with me. So I'm most active on Instagram at wild.astrology, as well as on Facebook under Wild Astrology. I'm more than willing to hear from you and to connect with you. So please send me an email or a message. And to view my full service details, head over to my website, www.wildastrologybyalex.com. I do send a monthly newsletter, so please be sure to subscribe. And again, just a friendly reminder to check out the description box so that you can be up to date with our upcoming and current events and offerings and ways that we can work together. Thank you so much once again, and take good care of yourself.